Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 177 of Rush Roundtable. Today we have a fun one and we hope an informative one. It's introducing someone to Rush, or perhaps you're a new Rush fan watching this and you want to more or less learn how to get into Rush from a couple different perspectives. So, where did we get this topic? I see far too often on Reddit folks saying, "Hey, I want to get into Rush. Where do I start?" And of course, every Rush fan on the planet provides their opinion, and the comment section of that Reddit post becomes 80 comments, and I'm sure the original poster for that, probably their head wants to explode, right? So we kind of wanted to give you four different perspectives, four different era Rush fans. Perhaps you can associate with one of us and take on, what we think is the way to get into the band. So without further ado, I'm going to go first. I'm going to give you kind of what I think is the best way to get into the band. So for me, I took one of these routes with my best friend, and I'll get into that. I'll get into the route that I took. I have three different routes that you can start with. All right. So I made a flow chart, or see my screen, right? You can see my screen.
hmm
All right.
A hell of
So
a flow chart.
it's a hell of a flow chart. So shout out Microsoft Visio, or yeah. All right. So it starts with, what kind of music are you into? That's the first question I'm going to pose to you as someone trying to get into Rush. If you're into everything, you're going to start at Power Windows, 1985. I think Power Windows is the most balanced Rush album. I think it's one of the most accessible Rush albums. If you're into just generic rock and you don't like rap, you don't like country, whatever, you're going to start at Moving Pictures, plain and simple. You're going to start at Moving Pictures. But if you're into kind of heavier rock, prog rock, maybe metal, I'm going to have you start at Permanent Waves. So if you take the Moving Pictures route, and I would suggest to anyone watching this, maybe screenshot this. If you want to take my route, screenshot this, and then you can kind of work your way through my idea here as we go. So if you're starting at Moving Pictures, then you need to decide, well, do you like kind of the synthier songs, or do you like some of the longer, proggier songs? So do you like the Red Barchetta and the Camera Eyes of the world, or are you liking the Tom Sawyer and, kind of Vital Signs of the world? If you like the synthier songs, Tom Sawyer, Vital Signs, that kind of route, good. All right. Then move on to Power Windows. If you like the longer, proggier songs, well, then follow the era all the way over to Permanent Waves. So from Permanent Waves, do you like the Spirit of Radio and Entre Nous, or do you like kind of the longer form songs in Jacob's Ladder and Natural Science? Well, if you like the longer songs, then move your way back in time, and I've got years on here, so, so it's easier for the viewer to kind of know, or the new fan to kind of know when these were released. Go backwards in time, listen to Hemispheres and A Farewell to Kings. Do you like them? Well, no. Come back all the way over here to Moving Pictures and follow the Cynthia route. If you do like them, keep going backwards in time, 2112 and backwards, meaning Caress of Steel, Fly By Night. You do the research. I'm not going to go too far into that. Next, so if you're following the Cynthia route, or you like Moving Pictures and you like Power Windows, well, then you're going to go into Grace Under Pressure and Signals. Those are, of course, the more Cynthia records. And if you like those, continue onward with Hold Your Fire, which is probably the least favorite Cynthia album of the synth era. Viewers, Rush did a whole bunch of synth albums. I would say 5 prominent synth albums from 1981 and Moving Pictures all the way to 1987, Hold Your Fire. A lot of synths on those records. There's 5 of them. They're all pretty accessible, but that's the route I would take. If you don't like it, so if you get to Power Windows and you don't like the synth route, move onwards to Roll the Bones. Roll the Bones is ever so slightly synthy. They're kind of moving out of the synth, era, right? But it's still very rock based. And there's some pretty accessible songs. There's even a couple raps, one on Roll the Bones, the title track. There's a kind of sort of rap on the closing track, You Bet Your Life. So you said you like everything, right? So you must like rap. So enjoy Roll the Bones. Um, do you like Roll the Bones? Yes, I like it. Yeah, yeah, of course. We all like it. Yes, I like Roll the Bones. All right. Well, then go backwards and forwards. The two records that surround it. Presto, 1989, a little bit more synthy, but also rock based. And then Counterparts, 1993, very rock based, very nuts and bolts kind of rock and roll, a little grungy rock and roll from that era. And then just continue onward through the rest of their catalog. If you don't like Roll the Bones, well, we're kind of at the point where you're shit out of luck. So just go back to the very beginning, 1974, the debut album. See if you like their straight ahead rock and roll, just kind of Led Zeppelin influenced record, um, and just continue onward and basically start the journey from scratch from the very beginning and see how it goes. So that's my plan of action for a new Rush fan. You've got basically three routes you can start at, and then those routes kind of intertwine here as you go about. So panelists, I'm curious kind of what, without giving away your plans, I'm curious what you think of my plans and how you think that might work for getting a someone who wants to get into Rush.
I think for sure to start off, first, the just amount of effort that went into this. This is a really, intricate way of thinking about it. Great job with this. I like your idea of having different routes that kind of weave in and out of each other. Basic, almost every single album is represented on here, and there's a lot of natural progressions that flow into them. And I think that's a really good way of thinking about things. They have just a incredibly diverse discography. I don't necessarily blame anyone for not preferring one album over another because they can be two completely separate things. Someone who really enjoys A Farewell to Kings is probably not going to get the same level of enjoyment as Power Windows. Not saying that they won't like the album, but it's a very different realm of like sonics completely.
Right.
And I like that you have these different routes that kind of go through and then loop back in each other, like towards the end. It really encourages to explore Rush's whole discography, not just like the like really heavy songs or the really prog songs or the really synthy songs. It gets you all over their body of work, regardless of the route you take.
I will add one thing which I should have put on here, but I didn't. If you're digging a specific era, which a lot of the eras are represented on here, explore the live albums from that era because some songs are revisited and played slightly different live in that, all right, well, you like moving pictures, but you like the synthier, you want to move forward, but you also like Xanadu from Exit Stage Left, or we'll leave it at that because it's for a new fan. So Exit Stage Left, a live album that came right after Moving Pictures, right? There's a lot of earlier material on that live version. But I would say it's probably not as heavy as you might get from some of the studio versions of those songs. So you might then want to move backwards in time by, um, listening to the live era, or the live stuff from those specific eras. But that's my that's my introduction. So, Ryder, let's hear yours.
One note, I noticed there was not
Yeah.
a direct arrow calling out Progressive Steel. That's obviously where you should be starting with the Fountain of Lamneth.
Very accessible
Everyone
from the
just stop
get-go.
Very accessible.
watching. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
That's
geez.
for the
no,
hardcores. 20-minute
Caressive
prog.
Steel, Caressive Steel, I think a little bit less accessible than a record like 2112 or Hemispheres or A Farewell to Kings. If you get to, well, all right. So again, this is for a new fan. I mean, of
Yeah.
course, probably our hardcore fans are going to watch this as well, but I will just share this for the new fans. Caressive Steel was 1975. Caressive Steel came before 2112. So we're talking over here in this area. If you get to 2112 and you like it, move backwards in time to 1975's Caressive Steel. And there is, of course, some good material on that as well. So, Ryder, what do you got?
Awesome. So I approached mine a little bit differently. less of less of following a straight progression through albums and more just allowing the exploration of individual songs. So kind of hear me out on this. It's a little tricky to explain, but Rush, as I said earlier, Rush has an incredibly diverse discography. They're very often kind of, a lot of the albums are grouped together, but a lot of the times with the band, one album was not always going to sound like the album that comes directly after it. Think about like big differences. There's for the hardcore fans, Roll the Bones into Counterparts. It's a very different idea. So this way is to kind of get you familiar with a wider variety of their music just individually and encourage the exploration based on those songs. So let's think about it on like a streaming service. Most streaming services, when you look up an artist, will have a list of like their most popular songs. I'm looking at Spotify and Rush's page on it right now. The top 5 songs: Tom Sawyer, Limelight, The Spirit of Radio, Closer to the Heart, and Fly By Night. I would suggest starting off listening to like probably the 10 most popular songs on that initial list, just to get an idea of what these guys are about. These songs tend to lean a little bit more into the rock part of Rush, but they do have a fair bit of experimentation. Looking a little bit further down on the list, there's songs like YYZ, Free Will, and Subdivisions, which some of those songs start to introduce like synthesizers into the mix. So based on these songs that you listen to here, kind of think about which ones you like the most. And what I would then do is you have 2 options. Either start looking up videos of these songs live, or going into the compilation albums that these songs are in and exploring those. When you check out, live videos and compilations, it's not necessarily all these songs that go fit together. Sometimes you'll get like Time Machine Live where they play all of one album, which is great. But as Ryan said in his, when we were talking about it after, there's so much variety in these live shows. So as you watch these concert videos, and then as you explore the compilation albums, which, they're compilations, it's a bunch of different material from throughout their discography, you start finding more of these individual songs that you start liking. And then maybe from there, I really like some of the stuff I've been hearing, like Subdivisions, Analog Kid, Losing It. I'm sure you'll hear like those as you start going through these concerts and these compilations. Maybe I'll check out Signals. So then from there, once you've familiarized yourself with more of Rush's discography and you've found these different songs that kind of fit these little niches that you enjoy, like the long form progressive rock epics versus the little bit more commercialized stuff that we were getting in the 80s. And then from there, use that to kind of explore these albums. Definitely, and it's not to say like there can't be a list of like recommended albums. I think if you want to just start listening through albums, definitely strong ones like Moving Pictures, Permanent Waves, those ones immediately jump out to mind, and it's so easy to find other stuff throughout that. But if you learn all of these different songs from all throughout their career, you start to develop more of a taste, pay attention to which ones you're listening to more, and then being like, okay, I'll listen to the album that this one's from, like Closer to the Heart. You listen through all of Farewell to Kings. And then that kind of encourages, Cygnus X1 Book 1. Oh, sweet, I'll check out Hemispheres then. So going through all these different songs, I think it's important to use those as starting points to kind of further yourself through, because that's kind of how I became a fan of the band. My dad and his brothers love listening to Rush, so I listened to a lot of it growing up. And then he took me to the Cinema Strangiato, and that's kind of what lifted it off, was getting to see a live video of a bunch of songs that I already knew, then videos of different songs I didn't know, and then just encouraged me to listen to these albums that came out of that. Like, I remember very early on, my favorite Rush songs were Red Barchetta and Roll the Bones, which are pretty unconventional, like different ones. But because I saw R40 live, I was able to get that idea of how wide their discography was. So kind of all in all, my way of thinking about it is use these songs as launching points to go into these like live videos and compilation albums and just keep using those to discover a wider variety of the sound. You don't need to feel pressure to immediately know every single Rush album off the top of your head. Like I could point out any song off of any of these ones that are right behind me here, but that kind of stuff takes time. You don't immediately have to be like a full album, sink all this time to this band that you aren't really sure about. Just start discovering the songs one by one. And then if you enjoy that, explore it a little further, because that I think is more worth it than trying to force an entire, large epic album right down your throat. Like if you were to say to someone like a really long album like Vapor Trails or Clockwork Angels, that's a lot of music, but definitely use these songs as your launching point to get to the rest of the discography. That's kind of my whole philosophy with introducing someone to the band.
I love it.
Yeah, right. That sounds like my
I
journey
will say,
too. A
Mhm.
little bit.
I will
yeah.
say one thing that I didn't even think of was watching the live material, because
Yes.
I left a comment on someone's Facebook post the other day, and I'll get into that in a second. But watching the live videos, you kind of learn more about the three guys in the band, who are probably the nicest rock and roll band you'll ever learn about. Okay,
For
in
sure.
terms of how nice of people they are. And one thing Neil, the drummer, said at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame speech, the induction speech, was, "What more can you do than inspire people?" That's paraphrasing, but it's close. Um, uh, One thing Rush did for me, not that I needed it, I guess, but one thing that Rush did for me was inspire me to be a good human being. And that's the comment that I left on someone's Facebook post a week or two ago. And I think that if you're trying to get into Rush, not only do you get into the music, but you kind of sort of feel like you connect to the three members of the group. So watching live stuff, I think, is definitely beneficial.
Mhm.
So good
For
call.
sure. Especially with appreciating the level of musicianship that goes into it. It's so
Yep.
easy to listen to music and think about it, especially in an age where you can find so much music for free on the internet. You kind of just think of these things as sentient beings of music, but you don't think about the fact that this is three guys in a studio. And I think,
Right.
being able to listen to this stuff, but then also to be able to see the members literally 50 minutes before I started joining this Zoom meeting with these guys, I was watching Neil Peart drum solos in my room with my roommate, who I've kind of got into Rush through listening to these songs one by one. And then he was like, "I really like the drummer," and I'm like, "Oh, check this out." So he started like being like, "Holy
There you
crap,
go.
Neil Peart, he's crazy." I think a very big part of Rush is the three guys, and that's what I think is so cool about the Rush community, is that everybody understands like how cool of a band these guys are, because it's so easy to look at a band like Motley Crue and see like all these guys that are, for all intents and purposes, kind of just like the same generic rocker guy, and it's like, okay, they make hard rock music, but Rush have a really unique like stage presence to them, and so much of the band is based on their live performances, like their notoriety and how they're able to do all this stuff live. So it's just really good to watch these live videos and get that connection with the band.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, Viv, what do you got?
I have a different approach. Sit down, buy permanent waves, sit down, and don't move until it's over. I don't do flow charts. I'm old school, okay? I don't do flow charts. I don't do live. I like to sit down, listen to the music, not even the words. Listen to the music, get into the music. Spirit of radio, to me, permanent waves, moving pictures, signals. It's middle of the road. It eventually you're gonna get into everything. Once you understand the band, once you understand their thoughts on music, on life, then you'll get into the different eras. But I think those three are middle of the road, and I don't think you should get into the lyrics until you've understood the music. um I don't I go album by album. I don't go song by song.
Right.
I I think feeling it is more important than where you need to go next. I think you need to feel it. I've always told everybody Permanent Waves. That's the one album you need to start with. You're gonna scare them if you do Caress. You're gonna scare them if you do 2112. Although, let me tell you something, Caress is top of the line, you know, top 10. So, but it's gonna scare somebody.
Scared me the first time. I was like, what the hell is this thing?
You're also gonna scare them if you do Hold Your Fire. It's a little too mellow for some people. To get into Hold Your Fire, you have to understand their thinking,
Right.
why they're doing it. They're not doing it
Sure.
to change style. They're doing it to show you different aspects of life, what the way three men can vary from era to era to era, and it's possible to make beautiful music that's not rocking out all the time. Deep thoughts, deep lyrics. I think I just think each style has to be dealt with separately. I think you need to start middle of the road and then work your way back and then work your way forward. Because once you work your way back, you'll see how they progress. That's just I like just sitting, listening, and then understanding once you've listened to the music. It's basic. It's, you know, I
thought about the same type of approach. Just play those three albums top to bottom. A lot of hits, you know, a lot of diversity in those. I mean, that's why I kind of took the approach that I did with the three albums. Now, I didn't use Signals, I used Power Windows, but yeah, I mean, they're a lot alike in many ways, but
Power Windows is a very, very deep album. I think it's more deep than Permanent Waves.
sure.
I think it's got a lot more substance. Permanent Waves is a very, to me, like a fun, happy-go-lucky, light and airy.
But it's got everything though. It's got your radio friendly songs in the spirit of radio. It's got your natural sciences and
That's why I would start there. Power Windows is a little deeper. Power Windows, you're gonna wanna focus more. This, you watch Spirit of Radio, you're like, holy crap! Look at these guys. Look at the way they intertwine. It's just to me, that song is just
a little bit looser. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not Farewell. Free Will is looser, but also concentrated in that there's a subject matter here, and we're trying to impress you with certain areas of this. But yeah, I mean, it's also radio friendly, and
I don't suggest lyrics until you've heard the music.
Sure.
Once you've heard the music, then go back. That's what we used to do as kids. You buy an album, big album with the liner notes, and you sit on your bed and hours and hours and hours repeat on vinyl, repeat, and then you read afterwards, and you read every single word, and that takes up a whole night, and then you've understood.
Right.
And that's what it's concentration. It's getting into it. Not when you have time to turn on YouTube and find a song. You have to. Rush is not an every person's band. It's not made for everybody. It's made for the thinking man. Yeah. If you're not a thinking man, you ain't gonna like it. You ain't gonna get into it. Oh, Tom Sawyer, Limelight. Bullshit is what I'm saying.
That's a very good point.
That's the least of the song. That's the least of their repertoire, what they can do. So
we should have had you say that at the very beginning, because it probably could have saved people 24 minutes. But it's a very valid point. Like, I mean,
it is, yeah.
And it's perfectly acceptable to watch this video and try to get into Rush and not like it.
As you see, people, you know
it's
me.
Gonna happen.
I'm all heart when it comes to Rush. I'm not technical. Yeah. I'm all heart. That's how I approach things, with heart.
It's certainly gonna. I mean,
that's how I
love Motley Crue just as much as the next person, and it's the complete opposite of it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Right. But Motley Crue is not a band that you can sit and read liner notes and listen to the music and get it. Totally. You know what I'm saying?
It's a totally different universe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's another band
like Rush. I'm going to be very honest. I don't think there's another band like Rush.
No, there really
that
isn't.
has everything. It's got every style. It's got excitement. It's got drama. It's got beauty. It's got slowness. It's got rock. And then the lyrics come in. I don't think there's another band like that.
No,
I
there
really
isn't.
don't.
And it's like what Gene Simmons said in Gene Simmons of Kiss, of course. You know, those maybe watching this video don't know who Gene Simmons of Kiss is, but Rush did again, I'm trying to format this in a way that, you know, this is a new fan, so that's watching this. So trying to be as informative as I can. Rush put out a DVD in 2011, I think it was 2010, 2011-ish, called Beyond the Lighted Stage, where Gene Simmons of Kiss said, "What kind of a band is Rush?" Well, it's Rush. And that basically just speaks to the fact that they're so unique and exactly what Vivien just said. So, go ahead.
Look at all the bands nowadays. Look at all. I think the popularity of Rush has grown
Oh, it has
100-fold
in the
since
last
they
10 years.
retired. Yes.
Yeah.
So look at all the bands that are trying to incorporate their style. Where do you have that? You don't have that. You don't have any other musicians trying to be like anybody else but Rush. There is nothing.
Crown Lands just put out a brand new record. Yeah.
Crown Lands, Rush. Anything that's thinking is Rush. There's no other band out there to want to emulate.
Right. Well said. All right, Pat, what do you got?
All right, so I kind of approach this from my personal perspective of like, you know, I've had numerous friends over the years who like obviously know I'm a Rush fan because I talk about them and post about them a lot, and you know they're similar age and music and like rock, and they'll ask me for recommendations, and so I've kind of got like kind of three things I look for when I'm trying to introduce someone to Rush. One, know your target. Like, what are their current favorite bands, past and present? What decades of music do they like? Rush has such a large and varied discography, so my approach has been trying to start with songs that are kind of close to where they're already at. Like, I have two friends on completely different eras. He loves 70s classic rock. So when I introduced him, I started with some 70s songs. I have a friend who's very into mid 90s to like 2010s, very fast, very heavy, hard rock. So I started with like some songs from Vapor Trails and Clockwork and Snakes and Arrows. But within that, a key thing that I've done is my number two thing is don't share too many songs. Don't overwhelm the person. If you give them too many songs, too many full albums, that becomes work. That becomes homework. This is supposed to be fun. So my thought is start small. Just 5 to 10 songs. So like when I was introducing my friend to Vapor Trails, I just gave him like Earthshine, One Little Victory, Ghost Rider, and I think I gave him Out of the Cradle. And he really liked them. And I gave him Far Cry and Headlong Flight and Caravan. And that was just a really nice sample, and that he spent some time with them, liked them more and more, and started to kind of dive into the albums on his own and work his way back at different times. And then I've had a friend, you know, for my friend who was really into the 70s, I gave him 5 to 10 songs from the 70s. He loves Fly By Night. He's obsessed with Fly By Night. He can't stop singing the song Fly By Night to me every time I see him. And then from there, he's dove into some more songs in that area. So don't share too many songs. And kind of what Ryder talked about with, start with the popular songs. They're popular for a reason, people. I know us old school, longtime fans like to, you know, take shots at the popular songs, but for a new fan, that's the entry point. Get them hooked. Then they'll dive into the deeper stuff and find their way to the more obscure stuff. It's a progression. They're popular for a reason. Limelight. That's one of the songs that got me hooked. I got obsessed with Limelight, and it led me down other roads. And then the last thing, don't be too aggressive about it. Don't be a psycho. Nobody wants to be overly pressured into liking something. Make it available. Be enthusiastic. Talk it up. Say positive things about it. But don't be like obsessively checking in on them and like berating them, or like, it takes time. When I first was introduced to Rush, it didn't hit for me. Nothing happened. And then 6 months later, I came back to it, and it was like listening to the heavens gates open up, and it was a new experience. So just take your time. that's my thing. Know your target. And again, I kind of approach this from a one-to-one perspective of if you're trying to get someone into Rush, or your friends and family around you, just know your target. Where are they at right now? Don't share too many songs. Don't be too aggressive, and rush on. There you go. That's my approach.
Your whole thing with "don't be too aggressive" is funny to me because we're 4 days removed from the new Metallica record coming out, 72 Seasons, and I've probably texted my uncle 3 times. Hey, did you listen to the new Metallica record? Hey, did you listen to the new Metallica record? Hey, did you listen to the new Metallica
3
record?
texts is too many, man. One is great.
3 different
text.
days.
Yep.
But no, yeah, you have a point. I mean, yeah, because if you're pushy about it, it can be like a turnoff, just like with anything in a
anything.
relationship
With
or
any-
with yeah.
It's a fine line.
I think
Present it. Yeah.
I think so I think a good takeaway here is we've all presented 4 completely different routes to take. So I think with Patrick's, you're a little bit more like he said one-to-one. So I think leave a comment on this video with the bands you're into, and then we or Patrick could then suggest maybe, so that type of thing. But I think kind of the overall takeaway here is that if you wanted to combine all 4 of our thoughts together, I think I took my flowchart. Ryder said start with the hits. Viv said really start with permanent waves and then moving pictures and signals. And Patrick says start with the hits, but kind of basically, if you don't know any Rush fans, meet a Rush fan and then be pointed in the right direction.
Yeah, ask a Rush fan for their opinion. Where area and decade to start?
I think at the end of the day, the 3 albums that were probably mentioned the most are the 3 that Viv said, because Ryder said start with the hits as well, and I mentioned 2 of the 3 that Viv said. Those 3 records have a lot of hits on them, so let's just start with that, right? So, again, to the new fan, Permanent Waves, 1980. You've got The Spirit of Radio. You got Free Will. You're going to hear them on the radio all the time. Moving Pictures, Side A of Moving Pictures, you're going to hear on the radio all the time. 1981. Tom Sawyer, Red Barchetta, YYZ, Limelight. And then Signals, 1982. There's at least 2, maybe 3 songs you're going to hear on the radio all the time. Subdivisions, New World Man. Sometimes you'll hear maybe The Analog Kid, depending on where you are. But right there, that's 8 or 9 tracks that you can kind of start with, that
3
are hits and
different styles. 3
exactly. Mm-hmm. Yep, 3 different records, 3 years apart, 1980, 1981, 1982, but all vastly different, and you can then branch off in different directions based on what you like. So I think that's a good takeaway as a group. But yeah, I mean, feel free to follow any of our guides. If you're a diehard Rush fan and you've been a fan of our channel for a while, leave in the comments, kind of what route you might take, or provide a suggestion. That's totally fine. But again, the whole reason I picked, more or less handpicked, the 3 of you and myself did this because I wanted to really have kind of dialed in perspectives from fans that became fans at different points, and we've got 4 vastly different perspectives. So however you get into new music, I would suggest taking one of our strategies to get into Rush. And the last thing I will say is I would say we do a pretty damn good job of breaking down songs and albums on our channel. So if you get into any of these songs and you really like any of these songs and you want to learn more about these songs, put in YouTube Rush Roundtable and the song name. And we are at the point where we're starting Roll the Bones next week. So we've got 6 albums to go, but we've completed 13 albums of song discussions. We've discussed every song so far of the first 13 albums in the catalog. And we've did a full album deep dive with Donna Halper, who freaking discovered the band. So, which is pretty awesome. On every album in the whole catalog. Rush deep dive and then the album you like. There's a whole bunch of material out there from our channel that can help you really explore some of these songs in greater detail. So I think that's really another avenue you can take once you start to really appreciate Rush, not just at surface level. You really want to start diving into Rush and learning more about, some of the themes behind the albums, or some of the more deeper meanings behind the lyrics. And of course, we talk about the music too. So really, that's what I wanted to say to wrap this up. Like I said, we're starting Roll the Bones. For those followers of our channel, Roll the Bones next week. So we'll start with Dream. I think it's next week. So we'll start with Dreamline. If not, it's the week after. But yeah, leave a comment, join the discussion. Rush fans or Rush Roundtable at rushfans.net. We'd love to have you. New fans, old fans, fans of all ages. We want to have everyone. So with that, we'll sign off. Rush on, everybody. Hope your journey goes well. Take care.